Has anybody ever caught a bass on a single tail grub? That's right. So if you've ever caught a bass on a single tail grub, especially one on a jig head, then this technique should be extremely familiar to you. But the thing, in my opinion, of why the little finesse swim baits are so much more effective than a single tail grub is because a single tail grub, all the tail is 100% of the action is from where that body tapers down into the tail section. From that point back is 100% where the action is. You heard the expression, the tail wags the dog. The tail doesn't wag squat on a single tail grub. The tail on a finesse swim bait wags the dog. The tail makes the whole bait roll back and forth. That's a whole nother dimension of action. And it seems real subtle, but I think y'all been picking up on the fact that little teeny action differences can be huge in bass fishing. And that tail, being the fact that it's a little boot type tail, totally changes the action of how it affects the action of the entire setup. It makes that bait roll back and forth as it's coming through the water. The tail kicks and it makes the whole bait roll back and forth, going through the water. Totally different deal. Totally different deal than a single tail grub. Now, the way you fish it is very similar in a lot of situations. You can throw that grub out there, let it hit the bottom, slowly reel it in, catch fish. You can do the same thing with this. But I think the added dimension is you can catch a few fish, but this bait in open water, throwing it higher in the water column to where it's 100% sight feeding deal, and those fish are going to come up. It looks like a fish that's rolling, kicking on the surface. Much more effective. So that's why I think the finesse swim baiting deal is going to be a lot more popular than a single tail grub has ever been. Still effective. Not saying it's not effective. I just think it's more effective because it adds that extra dimension of the roll in the bait. To whereas you get a laminate bait like this, all of a sudden it's getting light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, and that little extra action is very effective. And I kind of touched on it. That this technique is effective at any depth. I can take let's say a 3/16 ounce head and one of these little shock waves, and I can pull up to a bridge piling, and I can pull up to it, and I can fish for however, if it's 50 feet deep, I can fish the entire water column with one lure. I don't have to change it. You can't do that with a jerk bait, and you can't do that with a top water bait. You can't do that with you can't do that with a crankbait, but you can do it with a finesse swim bait. We'll take that jig head, and we'll throw it by that bridge piling. I'm going to reel it within a foot or two of the surface, see if there's any. It's suspended up near the top. Throw it up past there, maybe make a cast or two on each side. Then I'm going to reel it in. I'm going to pitch it in there, or cast it by there, let it sink down, maybe 10, 15 feet. Then I'm going to reel it on by, do the same thing. See if there's any fish in that section of the water column. Throw the bait out there one more time, let it sink on down a little further. You can kind of repeat that. You can take one bait with one head and fish it, that whole water column. I don't know of any other bait that you can fish effectively like that. There's a few other ones, but it's very effective around places like that where you're trying to figure out where those fish are going to be. And what you might find out is earlier in the day they're going to be higher up in the water column. Maybe later in the day they're further down. You don't know, but you can take one bait, make 3 or 4 casts, and fish that whole water column and find out where they are. So it's very effective at different depths. So that's one reason I really, really like the finesse swim bait. It's because you can use one bait and kind of fish that whole water column. And I touched on it before. I just want to reiterate. The jig head dictates the speed, not the depth. I would say that an 1/8 ounce and a 3/16 are what I probably fish the most. 1/8 ounce is a very versatile size. I'll drop down. This is a 3/32. I'll drop down to a 3/32 if I want to keep it real high on the water column. 1/8 ounce, 3/16, very effective. If I'm fishing it on or real near the bottom, and I want it to have a little bit quicker pace, I'm gonna go up to a quarter. I know there's times when a 3/8 or even a 1/2 ounce would be more effective with that real fast pace. But from my moderate experience with it, I don't call myself extremely experienced with this just yet. But I've had my eyes opened enough to know that it's something that I'm going to start working on more and more.
And the information Bass University provides isn't your basic run-of-the-mill fishing video. This is specific information from A to Z to help you learn, get to the water, and become a better angler quickly.